he is also the founder of Creation Discovery Centre and on the management board of Creation Research Australia. You'll find with Craig, it's not just about creation, it's about leading us to the Saviour. He's got a passion for the gospel. So Craig will now speak to us for about an hour, and then we'll be going to the back hall where there's a fantastic fossil collection. I can understand why he brought Derek. They've been tons of fossils, it looks like. Thanks, Derek. And we'll have supper there while we're looking at the fossils. And tonight, could you please use the disposable cups and plates to save someone staying back late and doing washing and cleaning up. Thanks very much. We'll hand over to Craig. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I hadn't turned around since 5 minutes before it was meant to start, and it's filled up. Well done. Great to see you all. And it's great to be here from Tassie, and thank you for putting on the weather so that we can feel at home. It's been great. And Derek, he begs me to come, actually. He just wants to come and see the country as well, don't you, Derek?
Oh, yeah.
No, I need him. I really need him. I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about Creation Research, just a couple of minutes as to what we do. So obviously most of you would have some idea of what a creation ministry is. We're a bunch of scientists, basically. We're a relatively small group, although we do have offices around the world. In the UK, got a great museum in Oswestry near the Welsh border in northern England, and we've also got some representatives in the USA as well. Brisbane, we've got another museum. This is in Tassie, on the side of a hill there, digging up marine fossils in the middle of Tassie, and that's about an elevation of 600 metres. This one here is our Jurassic Ark outdoor dig site, which is in Gympie. This one here is the shed that's over the log jam that's there. That's the log jam there. It's a Jurassic age, which we don't hold to, but that's what the secular geology would say it is Jurassic, so we call it Jurassic Ark. And it's basically showing a heap of logs washed in with a massive movement of water, and we've found some pretty interesting things. We do other experiments there showing how layers can form quickly in experiments. This is actually published science, not by us, but by others. So if you think that the layers formed slowly over millions of years, well, these sorts of experiments tell you otherwise. In our museum, we have a display that is there to show people that there must be a designer, and that's really what we're talking about tonight. And a young mum there, this is on the automatic. I thought I'd change that this afternoon, but it's still doing it automatically. The interactive bacterial flagellum model basically shows that the bacteria, the so-called simplest creature known to man, has actually got some incredibly complex design features. We had a paleogeologist come into the museum one day. I didn't know he was a paleogeologist, and was an expert in fossils, 70 scientific papers to his name. Geology is not my background, so when he told me that, I sort of choked internally. But I said, I'll stick with this because what we are presenting we believe to be the truth. In the end, he said that this was incredibly exciting for him. He was really pleased, and that was the words that he said on his way out. It may just have been providence that led me here today. Others have said things like that. I've never heard the message tied in with real history before. This young lady was on to me about the source of evil in the world, and we spent 45 minutes at the front counter before she even came in. There she is, smiling. And that's just a picture of our museum. A couple of these displays, like you'll see the hanging fish there, that's out the back there, and you can find out what the story is for that. And of course we have speakers, which is what we're doing now. So we are actually a ministry that is based on gifts and donations in terms of funding us, and that's how we get around and do things like this. We've spoken to over 600 school students on this trip, and more than half of them are probably from a non-Christian background, so that's been really encouraging for us too. Just get this out of the road a little bit there. Now, creation is in fact obvious. This is what we're talking about tonight because I'm a seahorse farmer, and Greg thought that's great because he's a dung beetle farmer. Don't see the link. Oh, we're both farmers, okay. Unique farmers, that's it. But I just wanted to start with the idea that, in fact, the Bible says creation is obvious in a number of places, actually. Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glories of God. Romans 1 says, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen. And I've got a little thing that I just want to prove to you that this is, in fact, the case. I've got this really special toy. Okay, I was given it when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I love it. And I saw it in the shop, and I said, "Mum and Dad, I want this. It's a castle set, right? It's got a tower blocks and window pieces, round towers, and a red roof. Just have to shake it a bit and put it back. Oh, it's time to go and play." And so I'd go off and play. Then I'd come back and see how it's going. Give it another shake, dinner time, go and have dinner, come back, see how it's going, give it another shake, and look, fantastic, yes, beautiful, fantastic. Has anyone got a toy like that? Anyone else? Toy that makes it so? Do you believe it?
Can you turn that box upside
I
down?
can't. It's stuck to the table. You're on to me. Okay, I know you're on to me. I've got 2 sets. And I made sure they were exact sets. Same blocks in each of those containers. So that little example, because you knew immediately that I pulled that out, that wasn't real, right? You knew that was made and that one's not. Now, if I did all the things that evolution wants, like time and energy with the matter, is that ever going to make that? What do you reckon? No? Anyone think it will? What about if I did it for a whole week, non-stop? Any sort of energy you like. Put it in a washing machine or something. No? No one thinks it's going to do it? What about if I did that for 1 million years? No one thinks that. In fact, time is your enemy, and so is energy. Energy and time will eventually start to fracture and break those blocks, break them down, and before too long you'll have a pile of dust. Everyone sort of agree with that? Yeah. So time and energy don't do anything, which is what evolution says it will. Time and energy and chance will get this. In fact, I had a scientist come into our museum and said, if you had enough blocks and enough time, it could make that opera house we had on display with 3,000 pieces, mind you. He believed it could. And I just said, well, you've got a greater faith than I have. Time and energy don't do anything. So I'll just leave that there to remind you as we talk tonight, because that's what we're talking about, in fact, is design. We recognise design. The only thing that's different between these 2 sets, in fact, is a mind. A mind that's outside the parts, has put them together with a plan, an intent and a purpose. The right blocks have to go in the right order on top of each other. Now that paleogeologist that I told you about in our little introduction there, evolutionary by the way, he said after 40 years of an underlying philosophy, you've undermined it. And one of the simplest things that we did was show him this example. He says that's so simple yet it's so profound. It may just have been providence that led me in here today. I wonder if it's providence that led you in here today. I'll get back to the microphones. There you go. And the Bible challenges us, as we start with the scriptures, just to lay out the challenge. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? There you've got the creation-evolution debate in a nutshell in Scripture. God has made foolishness the wisdom of our world, which says there is no God, there is no creator. You see, there is a huge debate out there at the moment about things making themselves from nothing. I don't know if you're aware of that, but this is what an article in The Guardian about a debate in the Royal Society in London, they reported in 2022. Strange as it sounds, scientists do not know, there's a thing in front of my thing there, I'll get that out of the way. Great, it's gone. Still do not know the answers to some of the most basic questions about how life on Earth evolve? Some of the basic questions. Take eyes, for instance. Where do they come from exactly? The usual explanation of how we get these stupendously complex organs rests upon the theory of natural selection. This is it goes on to describe what natural selection is. Then it says, this is the basic story of evolution, as recounted in countless textbooks and pop science bestsellers. The problem, according to a growing number of scientists, is that it is absurdly crude and misleading. And that's a pretty well, not anti-Christian, but it's certainly not friendly to Christianity, publication reporting this. So here we have the issue of creation and evolution coming to the fore because they won't accept creation as an option. I'm hearing myself back in it. Is that meant to happen? Can I mute that or something? Sorry about that. It's just I'm hearing myself talk. It's a little bit off-putting. So here's the... Now that's not working. Here we go. No. It's not working on the computer either. Anyway, so scientists at the moment, just while we get that fixed, I'll quote it on the next slide because I can sort of see the next one. Scientists refrain from considering God's actions in their work. Don't you need experts like that? Thank you, well done. Scientists refrain from considering God's actions in their work, it says in the science teacher's manual, basically in the USA, because they're using observation, experimentation and arguments, heuristics and so on, and they're avoiding God. No reference to God. That's the definition of how science is undertaken. You see, they're excluding any option that was put together by a mind. You have to try and figure out how the human cell, which is 100 million times more complicated than that, by the way, made up of building blocks, proteins, amino acids, the rest, and you have to explain how those could come together and make one human cell, let alone the trillion that make you up. So here's the starting point for a Christian who's looking at the science. And what I want to do is look at some of the science and how they report it. And for some of the younger ones, I'll try and explain it in simple terms, how they're trying to explain where seahorses come from. Because that is what we do. We breed seahorses, and I'm going to tell you what they are and some of their interesting characteristics as well. But what is your starting point? Is it the starting point that this science teacher's manual says? You've got to explain it without any reference to God, and that's your science? Wow. Well, my science, and a lot of scientists I know, start with the Bible. And they do great science. They do fantastic science. So with regards to this talk tonight, this is the starting point that I want to start with. God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind. That is a key point of what I want to talk about tonight. Maybe even introduce something that you haven't thought about before. And every winged bird, even according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the seas." Now, what is kind according to the Bible? This is the starting point. So what is it? Well, in Latin, it is genus. You know, when you're calling something like eucalyptus seaberi or something like that, you're giving the genus first and then the actual species. Eucalyptus is the kind, the genus. So is that the kind that was originally created, all the eucalypts, for example? Or is it the species, which, by the way, it means specially created kind? Or is it the family, the higher level? Possibly it could be any of those things, depending on what group of organisms you're looking at. Because these divisions that we make are human-made. Really important to remember. So what we're looking at tonight is the cygnathids. They are a group of, believe it or not, fish. It's the only fish that's got a neck. Try and think of another fish with a neck. Well, maybe you can. I've never had anyone come back to me and say, "Hey, you haven't thought of this fish with a neck." It's got a neck. And there's a group of animals in the cygnathids, including a seahorse. So cygnathid is the family. You've got sea dragons, which South Australians are quite familiar with, and you've got another group of animals called pipefish, and there's a whole bunch of other things, pipe horses, pygmy pipe horses, pygmy seahorses, and so on. Well, what's a cygnathid? A cygnathid literally means fused jaw. They've all got this long snout. It's not a crocodile, they can't open up and eat you. It's got a mouth at the end, and that means they've all got to eat in a certain way. They all have to eat. Well, if you're in the ocean and you've got to eat something and you can't open your mouth, how are you going to get it down that long mouth, do you think? You've got to suck it in. Exactly, you've got to suck it in. Sucking, not chewing. There you go, the food's going up the snout, but you have a problem. What else are you sucking in? Water. And if you keep doing that, your eyeballs are going to go boing, boing. You've got to get rid of the water. Virtually every mouthful. So it goes up, the food goes up, and it goes down into the tummy, but the water goes into the stomach, and I'm going to talk about this system in a second, but the water gets shot out through basically modified gill outlets in the top of the head. Now, the system that they use is called, and it's a big word, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it. It's called a latch-mediated spring-actuated system. There you go. Sounds very sciencey, doesn't it? But it's simple. It's basically like a couple of rubber bands going off at one time. Boing. Okay? I'm going to show you this in a second on a little video I've got, which hasn't got sound, so don't worry too much, down the back. They have to have this spring system where a muscle pulls back a tendon and then it holds it with another muscle like a latch, right? So it's like getting a rubber band and then just holding it with your finger, and it's let go, right? The tendon goes like that, or your rubber band flies off, but it's got a double one. It goes twing, like this in a microsecond. Now what one does is they aim for their food above their snout, it kicks the head back. The second one fires a hydroid bone under the throat that causes their throat to open and all the water to rush into that sort of space. And it fires in a microsecond. These things have to happen at the same time, otherwise it doesn't eat. Now, this is really powerful. Here's what some scientists say. The power of suction feeding in seahorses is approximately 3 times higher than the maximum recorded from any vertebrate muscle, resulting in suction flows that are approximately 8 times faster than similar sized fish. So this little seahorse with its suction is a really powerful suction, is what that's saying. Really strong. Now, it goes on to say this, and this is where I want you to separate what is actual science, what they're recording, with the storytelling that goes with it. Can you see where the storytelling is in this? It says, this system, LAMSA, in which slow, forceful muscles are used to load an elastic element that is kept latched until it is allowed to abruptly release, have evolved in many organisms and have overcome muscle power limitations. You see, there's science there. There's this system that has slow, forceful muscles used to load an elastic element. That's all sciencey. That's all pretty good. It's kept latched until it's allowed to abruptly release. That's good science. It's good investigation. It's good observation. But here's the storytelling. Have evolved in many organisms. Because as a scientist, you can do exactly the same science as a Christian and actually come up with that conclusion. Exactly the same science, and then you just add, I totally admit, it's storytelling as well, but it's based on a different foundation, which for me is the Bible. They've been designed in many organisms. What other organisms have got this? Well, the seahorse is the only one that's known that's got 2. And it's rare for any vertebrates, creatures that have got backbones to have them, but some vertebrates do, like the tongue in a chameleon, or the legs in a frog, or fleas, not a vertebrate, but fleas do have them, as do the mantis shrimp, the snapping shrimp. So these creatures have it. It's a fantastic design, and it's something that God has put in these creatures. Well, let's have a watch of them eating. There's a little shrimp above its nose. See how quickly it goes. This next one is a little bit bigger. Watch how quick. Bang. It's really fast, it's really powerful, and they're really accurate. Well, let's have a look at a seahorse. You have seen this one before too, but I promise there's different stuff. Just to show you a little bit of footage of a seahorse in the wild and some of their incredible features. This is a potbelly seahorse. You've got them off the coast here as well. This is in Tassie. There you can see him right in the middle holding onto a piece of weed. They can really hold on tight, which is interesting because they've got an armour, body armour, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Holding on really tight. He's not getting bashed against the rocks so badly because they actually have a tough armour. Now watch how they swim. Fin on the back and on the cheeks. That's how they turn. So God's thought of everything. If you only go forward, you'll run into rocks and everything. You get a flat nose, not a long one. And they use the side fins to turn. Now this is another member of the cygnathids. It's not a seahorse. I'm going to tell you the difference in a moment. It's a sea dragon, but very similar. Long snout, same sucking mechanism. Just had a go at something in the wild. There's a shark. This was put together for primary school students, so but it's pretty good to show you. But look, this one has got eggs on the tail. That's one of the only ways you can tell a sea dragon male from a female, when he's got eggs on him. Yes, it's the dad that has the eggs that he's carrying. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So what's the difference with a sea dragon? It's got a neck, but the head's not bent down like a seahorse, is it? It doesn't have the pouch where the eggs are. A seahorse has a pouch where the eggs are inside the pouch. And it's the male, by the way, that gets pregnant in a seahorse. It's the only creature on the planet where that's the case. So all the mums say, yay. And this sea dragon also doesn't have a curled tail. It doesn't curl the tail up. It will bend it a little bit, but it doesn't curl it right up. And it has these showy appendages that in a seahorse at least are called cirri. I think that they're probably not called a cirri, but it's a very similar thing anyway. They're pretty big as well. There's a big one near a diver. Okay, there's the eggs. We saw that in the video. They've got these little cup-like things that hold the eggs into place. There's one just starting to hatch on the right-hand side there. And they're pretty cute. There's a little fella just starting to grow that snout. There's one a little bit older with well-developed weeds. Yes, correct, it didn't make it. But there they are in the wild. Okay, so they're very well camouflaged, by the way. There's the weedies and you've also got the leafies. That's a weedy, by the way. That is camouflaged really well as well. Okay, so seahorses in comparison. They do have the neck, the bent head. They do have a tail that can curl right up. By the way, that's to the divine ratio, if anyone knows about the divine ratio, which is seen throughout nature. And the male has the pouch. So there's a male, the one that has that white sort of big belly, and the female, well, she has, I call it the six-pack. Right? So it's sort of reversed. The male's got the big pouch that he gets the eggs put in. So we know the female's the female because she transfers the eggs. We're going to show you a couple of pictures of that in a second. And the male in this particular species, that's why he's called the potbelly, he swells it out like a big pot, and he's saying to mum, you know, I'm gorgeous, right? I'll take your eggs. I'm really the one for you, baby. And mum says, oh yeah, okay, you can take all my eggs. Let's transfer them over to you. So there's my wife and myself, just next to one of our breeding tanks. And sorry, the bigger tank there is where they're grown out with some people looking on. And that's what we do in Tassie. We export them around the world. Rochelle sent a bunch to Japan yesterday and a bunch to China last week and the USA the week before and so on. So there's the dance, and there's the male opening up that pouch so that the female with that egg layer at the base of her belly, you can see there, is going to try and put the eggs in there This is a shot that I got one day trying to get the egg transfer, but they were a little bit careless on this occasion and she missed. There's the eggs. But that was a good opportunity, wasn't it, to show you what's going on there. It's like it was a setup, wasn't it? But anyway, that's what happens. He fertilises them and is pregnant. Sounds weird, doesn't it? He's pregnant. After all these years, I still haven't got used to that quite. But I thank the Lord every day. So there's the egg development stages, and it's only about 24 days or so, and then you've got a fully formed seahorses, and they're wriggling, and the dad gets really grumpy. He's down the bottom of the tank, and he's, don't come near me sort of thing, and then he spits them out. How many do you reckon you can have? 10,000? Oh, you've gone straight to 2. Okay, yeah, start low. Yeah. Never take him to an auction. No. Okay, so, yeah, over 1,000. And maybe for the tiny seahorses, with some species have tiny babies, they might even have as many as 2,000 or 3,000. Okay, so what about this pouch? This pouch is called an evolutionary novelty. There you go. There's a scientific paper that says evolutionary novelties adorn the tree of life, and yet their genetic origins remain a problem for biologists. A problem. What's a novelty? It's something new in a creature. So it's like, for example, an elephant's trunk would be counted as a novelty. Mammary glands, for example, are a novelty. Anything that's new, appears new in an organism, or different, probably better from a Christian perspective, it's quite different from any other creature. It's called a novelty. And seahorses are novel because they've got pouches in the male. So that's incredibly unique, isn't it? And yet the scientists are admitting how to explain things like even an elephant's trunk, how to explain things that are a bit different according to other creatures. We have trouble explaining it. And the reason they have trouble is because they're starting from the wrong worldview. They were designed. They were made specifically with a purpose. But what do they say the reason for the novelties are? The origin of novelties is now routinely viewed through the lens of evolutionary developmental biology. So there you go. Again, the scientists saying it. The reason they can't understand where these novelties come from is because you have to view them through the lens of evolution. But when you understand them as designed features by a great creator God, a great designer, there's no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. Now, where did seahorses come from, and how do they fit in with pipefish? So the typical story is that the animal on the right, which is a pipefish, looks like a big long pipe, doesn't it? Evolved a pouch and became a seahorse. It had to evolve a whole bunch of things, by the way. It had to evolve the neck and the bent head. It had to evolve the tail. It had to evolve the armour that is around it. And we're going to look at some of those things if we have time. I hope we can get through it. So this is a diagram from an evolutionary textbook about where seahorses evolved. Now you start, where do you start? From the left at the bottom. That's meant to be millions of years ago. Start, it's an unknown ancestor. Very important, by the way. We don't know what it possibly could have come from, but we'll call it unknown. And then somewhere along the process, up pops the brown one, and you've got a pipefish without a brood pouch. So there you go, the pipefish on the right there, okay? Then you go up to the red one, a bit further along the track, and then suddenly you've got pipefishes that have evolved a brood pouch. And then you go along a bit further, you've got the yellow line, and you've got pipefish-like pygmy pipe horses that have got more of a bent tail, a bit more of a belly, and a few other things that make them look a bit more seahorsey. Then the blue one, even more seahorsey, a bit more of a pouch, and then you've got seahorses, fully blown pouch, fully curled tail, bent head, even the fully blown cirri and the things hanging off their body. So that's the way they're evolving, upwards. That's the idea. But this is where I want to propose to you a different idea, because these animals have all got the long snout. The males all are the ones that hold the eggs, and there's got a similar type of armour which is under the skin. You can have a look at some of the seahorses we've got out in the supper area afterwards. They've all got elements of this. So how do we explain it? No wonder people think things are evolving, because there's so many close similarities. But remember our start, what's the created kind? What is the created kind and what's happening? Well, we can look at it that way. God created a complex creature and it has lost things along the way. It's lost the ability to curl its tail. It's lost bits of its pouch. So it's a little bit like this. Okay, you've got a castle there, right? Take that off. Still a castle, happy? I'll take another tower off, it's still a castle. I'll take a few windows out, still a castle. And on I go until it's no longer a castle. And if it's a living organism, you can lose bits and pieces. You can lose your sight, you get blind fish, you can lose lots of things. And if you view the science like this, you'll see it all the time in scientific things where creatures are losing things and they're saying, look, they're evolving. In actual fact, you started with a created thing and it's lost bits and pieces and even mutated, and we're going to talk about that as we go. And here's a proof of that. Okay, now, this is really sciencey, I'll get it, but I'm going to explain it. They've looked at the genes in male pregnancy in a pipefish, and they've revealed that it's got lots of genes operating. Okay? The annotated genes means they're the ones we've looked at, and about 1,000 of them were expressed as a consequence of pregnancy. So what's that saying? Pregnancy turns on 1,000 genes. 1,000 different sort of coded bits of information are turned on when the pipefish gets pregnant. That's really complicated, by the way. 1,000 genes. Humans, by the way, blow that out of the water. Probably tens of thousands of genes are turned on. But at least in the pipefish, you've got 1,000 genes. Well, guess what? Seahorses have over 3,000 genes turned on as a result of pregnancy. So you've got to somehow evolve another 2,000 different genes just to get pregnant, and if you don't evolve them, what happens? You're dead. You're extinct. There's nothing, right? But I can imagine if it's going the other way and you're losing bits and pieces, as long as the egg gets fertilised, etc., you can survive. And so what's the science sort of getting at here? Well, part of the same paper, gene losses and other changes have occurred in pipefish. Candidate mechanisms for the evolution of signathic traits, including an elongated axis and the loss of ribs, pelvic fins and teeth. See, what they're actually admitting is pipefish have lost genes, the things that are important for coding things. And again, you'll see this over and over if you read scientific stuff. If you're going to go to uni and study science, be switched on, look at the real science, and then be careful with the way you explain how it got there. Because this is the sort of thing you'll see. It's very complex, by the way, seahorse pregnancy. Here's a different paper that says this: the evolution of live birth requires a complex set of adaptations associated with the development of the embryo in a closed pouch, including it's got to exchange gases, it's got to get rid of all the waste or store it, and it's got to give transport nutrients through blood vessels, etc., to the developing embryos. So it's really complex, this pouch, that they have to evolve. And if they don't, from the first generation that they don't, they're dead. It's really complex. Okay, so let's summarise this. The brood pouch. The evolution model says it's going from fully closed at the top, other way around, unprotected eggs stuck on a pipefish, evolving all the way up to a fully enclosed pouch. That's the different stages in it. And you do see some of this. I saw a pipefish once that had well, we didn't even know it was pregnant, actually, because they hit it so well. It's sort of like this, actually. I'm not going to be a flasher, but it sort of opened like that. It's all split all the way down. Instead of just a little opening at the top that the seahorses come out, it actually opened it like that, and all the babies swam out like that. So you can see it's starting to lose the tightness on it, like this. Okay, so the creation model is it's going the other way. Now, the scientists that I've worked with, I know them. We've sent them, our seahorses, around the world for some of these genetic testing. And this is what they said, that live birth has evolved more than 150 times in different creatures. So you thought birth was a miracle? Well, not so much so by the sound of what these people are saying. It's evolved by chance, a fluke, chance, random, mutations, all the rest of it, 150 times in different creatures. Wow, that's an incredible faith, by the way. Because they admit, even though they're saying it's an excellent model for studying the evolution of complex traits, they haven't discovered how they could possibly evolve those traits at all. Doesn't work. Okay, what about the tail? A few more minutes. Has the seahorse prehensile tail evolved? There you go, it can curl right up like this, whereas pipefish can't. But evolution says pipefish evolved prehensile tails and became seahorses. Well, there's a seahorse armour, there's an x-ray of one, and we've got that actual dead example on the right there out the back, so I'll remind me to get that out if it's not out. So you've got this armour. It dries really hard, by the way, like that, but when it's alive, it can curl it up. How does it do it? Well, scientists have looked at this, and they've found that there's this really strong armour, by the way, and that bottom right diagram is showing if you put pressure on it, you can squeeze it up to 50% and you still don't hurt the backbone of the seahorse. So crabs grab a seahorse or a cormorant, and I've seen a cormorant grab a seahorse in the ocean off our wharf, and the seahorses wriggled and got away and swam away. And cormorants have got tough beaks. So scientists have looked at this and seen how they do it, and what they've actually got is like a loaded spring system between the plates. So the plates can glide over each other so that they can bend and so on, but it's got like a spring that the more it comes over, the tighter and tighter and tighter it gets. So it only goes to a certain distance. So robot engineers have thought this is a great idea for a robot with all of its electronics and so on inside of it. And they looked at two different types, a square design compared to a round design. And what they found is that the round design was pretty well hopeless. It would always end up getting clinked and bent and so on. And they found it was much more easily arranged in a square sense, and it was also stronger. It was stronger from both its ability to grasp hold of something like that bit of weed the seahorse was grabbing on, really strong, but also its resistance to being crushed by a crab or something. So really beautifully designed. But again, the scientists are saying that this armour in a seahorse and in the pipefish and in others have evolved numerous times. They're saying recently studies have shown that the prehensile tail, the tail that curls up, evolved independently in the different cygnathids, including seahorses, the ribbon sea dragons, and several types of so-called pipe horses. Because they can't get this connection going, why has this one got this and this one has got this and this one's got this a little bit differently, but we're not seeing it how they could... They must have evolved separately, right? Well, I suggest that this is all part of the downhill spiral from the original good design. I'm going to show you more of how this happens. Anyway, the scientist that was in charge of this research, this is his description of his work. Dr. Porter, his work in bio-inspired design aims to develop new technologies for use beyond their intended practical applications as functional models to explore the morphology, the way the body shape and everything, the material properties, biomechanics and evolution of natural systems. Wow. So in other words, Dr. Porter is therefore studying non-designs to get ideas for his designs to help discover how natural systems were not designed. It's incredible, isn't it? What's really happening? How did they get there? They can't get away from this fact, by the way, when they're talking about creatures are creations. Creatures are creations. They're designed. And he's even admitting that by saying they're bio-inspired design. It's God-inspired. design. Here's the ribbon sea dragon. We've actually had them at Seahorse World. Very expensive to get. And that was quite a few years ago now. These are a creature that are so halfway between a pipefish and a seahorse, it's incredible. They do have a tail that curls right up like a seahorse. They do look like a pipefish. They do have those cirri, like a seahorse often has, but not always, that can grow, by the way, shrink and then grow again. It looks like little celery leaves in this one. So they seem to be a partway stage to devolving into that pipefish that doesn't have the cirri, doesn't have the bent tail, doesn't have the bent neck, and so on. So what does the science actually say about where the armour's coming from? Here you go. Here's a scientific paper on it. It says intermediate skeletal morphology. So the skeleton halfway between the pipefish and seahorses could be found in the pygmy pipe horses and ribbon sea dragon, which are closely affiliated with the seahorses. There seems to be this intermediate step. By the way, you've got to appreciate that this is why scientists get confused with evolution. They think it's evolving upwards. It's devolving downwards. The reality is, however, admitted in this same paper, the pattern of evolutionary transformations that made the tail grasping possible is poorly understood. They don't get it. They don't understand it. We don't know how it could possibly have evolved. So, same summary, the evolution model is that you've got to gain genes from a rigid armour, like in the pipefish, into a flexible one in the seahorse, whereas the creation model says it's going downhill. Okay. You see this over and over again, as I've suggested. This is in a book that's very detailed on seahorses. And I'll just read it because he's admitting degeneration is obvious. He says, the relationships between all the different types of cygnathids become clearer when fossils are included in the studies of the families, as these are more primitive, so they say, and less modified than recent species. In fossils, the various features that were common between the different groups may have degenerated in modern species, such as certain fins. Some extinct forms represented links between different living groups. Okay, so creatures that we know no longer can see have what's he saying? In summary, degenerated. Degenerated. Acknowledged. Okay, just accept that bit. Degenerated. Acknowledged. Okay, what else do they say? Well, my wife went to a conference in Florida, a specialist conference on, believe it or not, cygnathids, seahorses, all the big public aquariums around the world. And this is what one of the scientists there said. The long bodies of pipefish have evolved from a mutation in growth regulating genes. So the normal genes that make a seahorse grow with its bent head and its curled tail have mutated. That's a mistake. It's an error. So instead of growing like a normal seahorse, it just keeps growing. It's mutated. It's a mistake. That's what a mutation is. It's a mutation. It's an error. It's not some sort of advantageous thing. I tell my kids they're more mutant than me every day. What do other papers say? The cygnathid genomes show that losses in specific genes or gene functions are responsible for evolutionary innovations. I think we've already pointed that out through the talk, haven't we? Genes are lost. So they've acknowledged what? Degeneration. They've acknowledged mutations. They've acknowledged loss of genes. Does this work for evolution? It doesn't work. That's just saying, like, if through a process of mistakes we'll get this castle formed. The random shaking, the random energy. It just won't work. Even if you have the different towers and doors and stuff constructed separately, are you going to randomly get them together in the right order? No. What's creation say? It says they're designed, which they admit to in their presentations. It's got irreducible complexity. It's so complex you can't pull the important parts apart and expect the creatures to still live. They've got purpose and function. That's how they eat. That's how they give birth. That's how they hold their tail and don't get swept away in the ocean. But they're impacted by that. Degeneration. They're impacted by mutations. They're impacted by loss of genes. So the science that's being observed is there within the creation model, but that's the bit they're rejecting. Does that make sense? I hope it does. We'll just move on from that one as our time's getting away. So there's an extraordinary faith involved here, where they say, as Rudy Cooter, who I've met, very good scientist by the way, says seahorses have evolved along different lineages well before the periods from which signathid fossils are known. In other words, there's no evidence they've evolved from anything. That's why they've got the unknown ancestor at the bottom of that so-called evolutionary chart. It's just no help to you. Now, this is going to sound really sciencey, just to make me sound like I'm someone that understands science. Despite their importance as evolutionary and ecological model systems, the phylogenetic relationships among gasterosteoforms, including seahorses, remain poorly understood, complicating efforts to understand the evolutionary origins of the exceptional morphological and behavioural diversity of this group. What's that actually saying? In English, we have no evidence that seahorses evolved from anything. That's exactly what they're saying in that statement. We have no evidence that seahorses evolved from anything. See, seahorses have been created for a purpose, to give glory to God, actually, through the design features. I hope that's happening tonight. See, Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist, says that biology is a study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. That asks the question, that's another whole talk we do, can you tell apparent design from real design? And John Mackay, the founder of Creation Research, has given this very useful formula, where the information in the product, the bush, is greater than the information in the product, the three-dimensional bird-shaped bush, is greater than the information in the parts that make it up the bush. So therefore, information has to be added by an outside source. You can do that with anything. A boomerang, bent stick, nope. Someone's added information to wood. The information in the boomerang is greater than the information in the wood. Information in a Boeing, which, by the way, a aircraft engineer told me when he was working on them, had 1 million pages in the maintenance manual. Lots of information. 100% non-flying parts, it flies because it's designed. Information's added. Birds, they just evolved, flukes of nature. No, they're the most incredible design of all those flying objects, and they can even reproduce themselves. Bone, keratin, muscle and proteins don't come together to make an incredible bird. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is what we're saying. You've got matter, energy and time. You've got matter, energy, and as much time as you want to give it. Is it going to give you life through chance, mutations and natural selection? Never. It always leads to what those scientists admit: degeneration, loss of genes, death, etc. But when you've got information and design, you get a creation from a mind. Famous scientists, Louis Pasteur, who was a Christian, said, "A bit of science distances one from God, but much science nears one to him." You see how you can get fooled? If you start and you kick God out to one side, and these seahorses and sea dragons and things, they look similar, so therefore one must be evolving into another, but we don't know where they possibly could have come from. Whereas if you start with design and a creator with a great mind, incredible, beyond our comprehension, and realise we're living in a sin-impacted world that is causing things to go downhill, degeneration, mutations, by the way, which cause things like cancer, downhill, you'll get a better picture of reality. And Paul realised this when he was talking to his friend Timothy. He said, "Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, i.e. the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, avoiding profane and vain babblings, avoid the nonsense and oppositions of science," there you go, science in the Bible after all, "falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith." Why did he say this? What is he saying about science? He's saying that false knowledge, Timothy, will lead you away from Jesus Christ. So the flip side of that is true knowledge points you to him. when you acknowledge there must be a designer, you start asking, well, who's the designer? And you seriously want to investigate and discover who is that designer. I need to know. It's incredible. It's fantastic. And then you want to, but there's some things going wrong every now and again. And we're living in a world where there are things wrong. So what's happened there? And the only answer to this is the Bible. The only answer that gives you the complexity of life from a creator God, the problem of sin and how it's impacted that creation so that we get degeneration and loss. And we're in the state we're in now. And then you realise, well, what can I do about it? What can I do about it? It's all downhill. And then you'll realise that the gospel that Paul was speaking to Timothy about, the good news is that there's a saviour. So Paul, when he was preaching to the Greeks, who are a bit like Australians now, right? You know, there's lots of gods, or there's no gods, or science is your God, or whatever. Philosophy is your God. He started with creation. Go and read it in Acts 17. But he didn't end it there. He said, this creator God now commands all men everywhere to repent and come back to him. Turn away from our walking away from God is over there. That's what it means. Turn and say, Jesus, you're the one. You're the one I need in my life. You're this incredible designer, incredible creator. Sin's a problem. I need to get past it. How can I do it? I can't do anything. I just got to trust in you. Just like the thief on the cross, just had to trust in Jesus. Will you remember me? Will you remember him? See, Jesus himself talked about design and the importance of it. In Matthew 6, he said, consider the lilies of the field. This is more in my actual area of study, by the way. And how they grow, they neither toil nor spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. And the science of his day had no idea how complex the lilies were. They couldn't have possibly known. They didn't have microscopes and things to see how they operated. But Jesus knew because he created them. But what was the most important thing that Jesus said? Seek first the kingdom of God. And all these other things, he'll add them to you. Seek first the kingdom of God in your science, in your study, in your work, in your family, in your life. I hope you're doing that. If you don't, make tonight the night that you give your life to Jesus Christ, the Creator, who is your Saviour. He's a good Creator. He didn't create using millions of years of mistake and degeneration. Perfect creation. Good God. He loves you. And what we've tried to achieve tonight, and we might have a couple of questions if people want. I'll let Greg lead that. Let's just finish with this slide. In the book of Job, perhaps the oldest written book in the Bible, but ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky and they will tell you, or speak to the earth and it will teach you. So we love doing geology as well. Or let the fish in the sea inform you, as we hopefully have done tonight. Which of these does not know that in the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. Praise be to his name. Discover him. Give your life to him. Follow him. It's awesome. Thank you, everyone. Did you want questions?
Has anyone got any burning questions?
Covered a lot of ground tonight. Your head spinning. You can ask me out the back.
Craig, absolutely fascinating in so many ways. But my question is not so much about the fascination of the design. Why would you breed seed?
Because we're nuts. No, look, the Chinese eat millions of them. They eat them. Google seahorse soup and be disgusted. But the original people that set up the farm, my wife was the first employee actually when it was set up. We didn't own it. I didn't start it as such. I was working in a different field. They wanted to supply this massive market and really help reduce the impact on the wild populations which were being decimated in particularly parts of Asia and so on. But producing seahorses in tanks on land proved not to be that economical, and the original people wanted to get out of it. And through a whole series, which is a long story, is that God brought us into taking over the farm, and we changed it to selling it very niche markets, pet, wholesale, higher value, public aquariums. You go to many public aquariums around the world, some of the world's most famous ones, from Monterey Bay Aquarium to sea life centres in England and Hong Kong Ocean Park, etc., buy seahorses directly from us, and universities for research as well. So we breed other fish as well, clownfish, shrimp, and take tools as well. So that's how we got into it.
Well, as you mentioned, I breed young bills, and there's a whole lot of reasons I do that, but you know, there's people in some of the Asian countries actually eat young bills as well.
The question is, what don't they eat?
This is interesting. All right.
How long does a seahorse live for?
Well, that actually varies from the pot belly, the cold water one, as sort of, maybe it's like dunking yourself in the ice all the time. You know, you live longer, don't you? They live like 9 to 10 years, but the tropical ones that seem to live right in the equator sort of areas might only live 4 or 5.
Okay. What sort of sizes were you talking about there? An inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 6 inches?
The pot-belly seahorse is the biggest, about a foot, 30 centimetres for the younger generation, and the smallest ones, you get pygmy ones. I sort of showed in that degeneration slide a sort of a runt, pygmy sort of seahorse, which really I think is a degenerate seahorse, and they grow just less than a centimetre. So, yeah.
Have you ever cooked and or eaten?
I haven't personally cooked them. I have eaten dried seahorse. We have sent a number for pharmaceuticals many years ago now, and I thought I'd taste them when I was fairly young in the business. And they're supposed to be supposed to be very good for certain things, shall we say, in the male human. And I've got 6 kids now, so figure that out. Hope I'm not in trouble for that.
All right. Well,